In 12 months, he added $16.9 billion, which is 1,15,000 crores. Imagine how hard he must have worked. Right? I mean, I cannot for the life of me imagine anyone doing anything that earns you 1,15,000 crores in 12 months. Now, you can of course say that it was accumulated by the dint of sheer labor and the sweat of his brow. You can think that. But less charitable minds like my own would suggest that subtle changes in policy made that amount. Because it did not happen in, say, every year. What subtle changes in policy that gives one telecom operator a killing edge over his rivals, so that those rivals, the Vodafones and the Docomos, all start merging in order to just survive. Policy driven. That's the point. It could be someone else. It doesn't have to be Mukesh. And to me, he's no different from the other 121 in the sense of the principles involved. That a policy, what you're seeing in the case of one individual is true on a national scale of one strata, where 121 individuals were enabled to accumulate wealth that made you rank number 4 in the world's list of dollar billionaires. You rank number 4 in the dollar billionaires list and number 131 in the Human Development Index. Okay? I mean, how do you reconcile these two? You're 131 in the United Nations Human Development Ranking, but 4 in dollar billionaires. Unless, of course, you can, of course, get other such indexes. The Times of India will tomorrow publish something or the other. We are 3rd in the happiness index. The thing about India is that, I mean, just look at your size. You're always going to be 3rd or 4th largest something. But anyway, now I got curious when I saw this $16.9 billion. Fair bit of money. And I thought, what would it take an ordinary Indian to earn that much? The everyday Indian, the laborer, the farm laborer, or those laborers and marginal farmers who work on the Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. You know what it would take? It would require, to generate the same amount in 12 months, on a national average of the NREGS wage, it would require 18.7 million laborers working 365 days without a break, without Saturdays, Sundays, Diwali, Christmas, New Year, nothing, and they would generate $16.9 billion. Now, you ask yourself whether any society can or historically has sustained such levels of inequality. Has any society you know of indefinitely sustained such levels of inequality? Yeah. There are societies somewhat more unequal than India. There are at least 2. But the rate at which we have grown our inequality leaves all the other nations way behind. This was Forbes data, but you take the data of Credit Suisse, the multinational bank, which puts out a global wealth data book every year. The last report shows us that the wealth share of total household wealth of the bottom 30% is actually zero, negative. Because the bottom 10% is minus 0.7%, and then the other two are plus 0.2 and plus 0.4, plus 0.5. You add up plus 0.7 minus 0.7. Effectively, the bottom 30% own nothing much. The bottom 10% share went negative in the last 4 years. It used to be plus 0.1. It went negative in the last few years. But I'm not saying it happened just because of the last 4 years. We worked very hard to land where we are. Okay? We formulated policies and pushed them for 20 years to get to this level of inequality. Now let's look at the other end of the spectrum. What is the average income of the Indian farmer? And then of the rural population in general? The last number we have from the National Sample Survey Organization, I don't go by the new investment stuff and all that, the NSS data on average income of a farm household in this country. The operative word is household income, not individual income. And a household has 5 members. Average farm household in India, when last recorded, which was late 2013, 6,426 rupees a month, which is about $90 at present. That means a per capita of under 1,300 rupees. Now, that isn't the farm household's income from farming. That is the farm household's income from all sources of activity. Now, every one of you, I'm sure here, knows how an Indian farm runs. The eldest brother will stay on the farm. He will do the farming. One younger brother will be a teacher in a primary school in a different place. One brother might be driving a taxi in Mumbai, as many of them from East UP are. One might be a chaprasi in the collectorate. They will all send some remittances and they will all get their share of the harvest. This is not true only of India. The United States Department of Agriculture tells us that in 2016, the average income of the American family farm as against corporate farm, 85% of that income was from non-farm activity. Okay. Yet, here is an occupation that puts the food on your table. What about larger rural India? The socio-economic and caste census tells us that in 75% of rural households, the main breadwinner takes home less than 5,000 rupees. In 90% of rural households, the main breadwinner takes home less than 10,000 rupees. The number of percentage of Indian households where the main rural households, how many rural households are there? 179 million according to the 2011 census. Of these, 90% the main breadwinner takes home less than 10, but fully 3/4 main breadwinner takes home less than 5K a month. And then, how many percentage taking where the main breadwinner takes more than 10,000 a month? 8%. 8% if you treat the country as a whole. If you take Adivasis and Dalits aside, then that's going to fall to less than half. It's going to fall to about 4% of households. And who are those Adivasis and Dalits where the main breadwinner takes home more than 10,000? Government servants. People working in lower round jobs in the railways, in the insurance, low end of the banking sector. And those are the jobs in which we shut down 1 lakh or 2 lakh jobs every year. So you can look where you're heading. 121 individuals owning wealth equal to 22% of GDP. 90% of your rural households' main breadwinner takes home less than 10,000. Yeah. Farmer, 1,300 per capita, 6,426 household income. So that's where you are. You have a gigantic water crisis, also brought about by a huge number of policies, but resulting in 5 or 6 major transfers. Transfer of resources, transfer of water, okay, from village to city, rural to urban. I live in my home. I ought to say I live in Mumbai because I'm mostly traveling, but my home is in Mumbai. I live in a locality that gets 24 hours water. I've never had a dry tap at home. All the water that I get, all the water that all of Mumbai gets, comes from 5 lakes in Thane, in the Adivasi area of Thane. And in those areas where the water comes from, you will not find one household with piped water. Their water we use. And if every one of you sees those photographs every single year of long lines of women standing with buckets and bottles near the tanker, where? In Marathwada, right? Aurangabad, greatest drought in 70 years. The poor woman standing in that queue, do you know how much she pays for that water? She pays for that water at the beginning of the scarcity period, 45 paise per litre. At the height of the scarcity period, she's paying 1 rupee per litre. In the same Marathwada, in the same Aurangabad, there are 24 beer and alcohol factories paying 4 paisa per litre. That's a huge increase. It used to be, for 30 years, it was 1 paisa per litre. Then somebody took them to court and the court gave a devastating judgment, make it 4 paisa. So, by the way, remember that every major newspaper in this country found the spine to criticize a High Court judgment when the Bombay High Court banned IPL matches in Maharashtra. They don't pay 4 paisa, they pay nothing. Okay? The people are dying without that water. Yeah. Then there are transfers. The RTI, used very skillfully by a couple of journalists in Mumbai, particularly Priyanka Kakurkar of the Times of India, shows us that Mumbai, that the towns and cities of Maharashtra are getting 400% more water, drinking water, than the villages, though the water comes from the villages. There are transfers from rural to urban, from agriculture to industry, and farmers get shot up trying to stop the transfer, like in Mr. Sharad Pawar's Mandsa, in Maval, in the Maval area, where 6 farmers were shot dead trying to stop water being transferred from Maval agriculture to Pipri Chinchwad industry, quite a bit of that industry being illegal, unregistered, all of that. Third, transfers from poor to rich, transfers from food crop to cash crop. 2% of farmers in Maharashtra utilize 68% of its irrigation water. They are the sugarcane growers. The rest have to make do with whatever is left out in that. Yeah? There are transfers from livelihood to lifestyle. All over Maharashtra in major cities, multi-story buildings are coming up. 30, 40 floors with a separate swimming pool on every floor. They're called balcony pools. I know you find that very difficult to believe, but you just have to Google there. You can read the ads. Aquaria Grande is the major one. Then after I wrote about it, they stopped advertising the swimming pool part. But it's got 2 towers. It's got at least 75 swimming pools because we could photograph it from one side. We don't know whether the flats on the other side, in which case there would be 150 in one complex. Yeah, of course you have a water problem. You have a migrations problem, as our young friend was talking about from today. In the 2011 census, it shows us that in the period 2001 to 2011, I can't say for what happens after that, we saw the greatest migrations in our history. If you read the census data properly. The URGD, which is the urban-rural growth differential, which many economists use as and demographers use as a ready reckoner for migration, is at its highest in 40 years. And the scale of migration would have been greater than even in the census after the partition. Indeed, for the first time in your history as a nation, independent nation, urban India added 1 million more people than rural India did to its population. You have an employment crisis. The number of, as we have made policy extremely hostile to farmers, people are leaving agriculture not in hundreds or thousands, but in millions. Between the 1991 census and the 2011 census, the number of main cultivators, which is the census abstract term for a full-time farmer. A full-time farmer is calculated as someone who has been, or full-time worker in the census, is someone who has been with that occupation for 180 days or more. 6 months or more tells me that you are dependent primarily on this occupation. Less than that makes you a marginal cultivator. Okay? So the number of main cultivators, your farmers, in 20 years between 1991 census, 2011 census, has fallen by 15 million, which means you are losing full status farmers at the rate of 2,000 plus every 24 hours. Every 24 hours. Now, where do they go? They don't all go to the cities, they don't all commit suicide. Where do they go? You can look at it in the next column of the census abstract. As the numbers of farmers are crashing, the numbers of agricultural laborers is exploding. In my home state, the unified Andhra Pradesh of 2011 census, in that home state, the number of farmers went down by 1.3 million, number of agricultural laborers went up by 3.4 million. It means just not farmers are affected, artisans, weavers, potters, spinners, fisher folk, all of them are devastated. You're looking at a gigantic collapse, a massive, huge collapse in agriculture. So then what do you do? Your agrarian crisis in 5 words, is the corporate hijack of Indian agriculture. The process by which that is achieved in 5 words: predatory commercialization of the countryside. People are paying for thousands of things which they never paid for before, which they had, which they grew themselves, like seed. Okay? And the result of this, in 5 words, greatest displacement in our history, achieved without tanks and drones and bombings, sometimes with also, as you seize land forcibly, but largely achieved by peaceful means, by simply cracking the livelihoods of millions of people. This is your crisis. Okay? Now, I said at the beginning that 310,000 farmers had committed suicide between 1995 and 2015. And that is a very bogus figure. I have no way of giving you a correct figure because you and I don't have the machinery to count. The National Crime Records Bureau, which gives you the closest thing to an authentic figure, which is 310,000, reflects many societal prejudices. For instance, because it comes from every police station in the country, the data. The police and most of our society don't consider women to be farmers. They are farmers' wives. Right? So, the number of women farmers' suicides is heavily undercounted. In Punjab and Haryana, best place to be a woman farmer. 0 suicides. You don't accept women as farmers. So the numbers don't reflect anything. You also exclude Adivasis and Dalits working on government distributed land. You don't include them. You don't consider, you hold them in contempt. You don't treat them as farmers. Right? So this is yet another situation. After all those exclusions, you get a figure of 310,000. It became such a nuisance, politically it became such a dynamite, that from 2011-12, state government started declaring 0 suicides. Didi said in Bengal, how can any farmer commit suicide when I am chief? So for the next 4 years, Bengal declared 0 farmers suicides. Raman Singh in Chhattisgarh had an average of 1,555 farmers suicides, its own figures, for 10 years. Then for the next 5 years, it has 0. With all these, then by 2013, 12 states and 6 union territories declared 0. And still the figure was higher than previous. So you can imagine what would happen if we stopped deluding ourselves as a nation and started telling ourselves the truth. Okay? The government, this successive governments have fiddled the data, massaged the data, but post 2014, you have a decisive government that does it decisively. So they just stop publishing the data. The NCRB data of 2016 and 17 has not been published until